Hi, everybody. It's Alida Hernandez, Rebooted Mindset, of course, a production of Spanglish Entertainment. Today, we have an expert guest. Today, we're having Nate Blum. He's the CEO of Sorghum United Foundation, and it's a company, a nonprofit that benefits from sorghum and millets, which are grains that you can eat. And he's trying to teach the children about sustainability and awareness for the children and engaging them young. So let's just bring our CEO, Nate Blum, in. So, hi, everybody. Alida Hernandez, Rebooted Mindset again here. And I have this incredible person here, Nate Blum, CEO of Sorgho, all right, Foundation, United Foundation.
That's right. Alita, great to be with you. Thanks for everything that you do for your listeners down there in Florida. It's snowing where I'm at now in Nebraska, so I'm a little jealous of the nice weather you've got. But yeah,
Yeah.
CEO of Sorghum United Foundation and the author of the Sorgho Squad. So really excited to be with you. I love Florida. It's great. Always
Oh.
nice to be down there.
I took off. I had the beach background. I said, "Nah, I won't put that on today." People, they see that, they're like, "Really?" You know.
Well,
So,
that's all right. You've got me
but
in my den, so and
oh,
then
that's good. We don't see the snow right now.
no, no, but I do have a cat wandering around, so she might. Yep, there she
Oh,
is.
there she is. Yep,
Just
that's
jump
what they
right in.
do. I know. I have a few cats myself. So tell me about how did you start the foundation?
Yeah, so the Sorghum United Foundation actually started, the story actually goes back about 3 years now.
Hmm.
At the time, I was the director of the Nebraska Sorghum Board here, working for sorghum farmers. It's a state agency that we call a checkoff program.
Hmm.
And honestly, at the time, I didn't know very much about sorghum, other than the fact that when I grew up on the farm, we grew sorghum, but I didn't really know anything about it. But the more I learned, the more I dove into the role, the more I learned about the nutritional benefits of sorghum, the effects it can have in combating things like stunting, the drought resistance for sorghum, and other millets, by the way, as well. The fact that they can grow all over the world in some of the harshest climates, places where maize and rice are failing, by the way. I really started to see that there's a lot of the problems that our world is facing can be addressed by pivoting, making a pivot to some of the grains that we eat. A lot of the food in the grocery stores, it looks like food, but it's not really food. There's no
Yeah,
nutritional
exactly.
value,
Mm.
right? So we really started on that, and through that messaging, kind of just started building a global coalition. It started out very loosely. A handful of us from Europe started this thing, actually got together and said, hey, the industry's got the same challenges wherever we are. Why don't we work together? And, through that, our foundation grew. So
Mm.
fast forward to January 2023, we were doing some work with the United Nations at the beginning of the International Year of Millets.
Mm.
And I found myself in Rome at the Food and Agriculture Organization for the opening ceremony of that.
Mm.
And at the opening ceremony, we had a handful of folks from Europe, great delegation from Southeast Asia, a nice delegation from East Africa, but I was the only one from North America. And my colleagues and I, we just realized that if anyone was going to push that messaging outside of Asia and Africa, it had to be us. So,
So silly. Cats are so
yeah,
silly.
yeah, well, that's Charlie. Charlie's a big helper, and I actually don't mind her. She gives us a little personality, so it's okay.
Exactly.
So anyway, so I came back to Nebraska from Rome there, and I quit my job. Actually, I was in a financial position to be able to do this. Quit my job, made Sorghum United a full time gig, and now fast forward from having just a couple of stakeholders and me doing this on my own. Now we have offices all over the world.
Wow.
We do work in Asia, we do work in East Africa, South America, the Caribbean, the Philippines, and we're speaking at conferences all over. So it's really been a blessing to be a part of this. We're literally changing the lives for thousands of people on the ground, mostly smallholder farmers in Southeast Asia and Africa. Not only creating opportunities for them to grow more nutritious food in climates that are challenging, but also giving them the tools that they need to be able to do their own value addition, create markets, and all the ancillary jobs that go with that. So yeah, it's really humbling work.
So besides going to all these other countries, how much have you done here in the United States? I mean, are you engaging the farmers here to grow it more? Because honestly, I know a lot of people are going to say, "What is sorghum?" Right?
Ah,
So
right.
I learned about mullet. I didn't learn about sorghum, but I heard about mullet from my Chinese acupuncturist because
Yeah.
I was having some stomach issues, and she said mullet. Okay. She says that doesn't raise your sugar. It's you can eat it, it's good for you. And I've never heard of it before. I had to go on Amazon. I'm like, what the heck is mullet? Like, it's not like, how now you go to the supermarket and they're getting a little bit better on some things. Like the rice is different rices, different
Mhm.
grains. So you'll find mullet. And I don't know if you can find sorghum. I don't think I've ever seen it.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things to unpack there. One, you asked first, what work are we doing here in the U.S.? So
Right.
we obviously we want to work here in the U.S. as well as we do in those other countries as well. Um, the big thing that we preach, whether it's here or anywhere else, really is that creating value addition proximate to the farm. What happens right now in the commodity markets, commodity marketing model, farmers can't control their prices because they grow a grain and then they just put it out as a commodity onto the market. The market determines the price. And the only way to really be competitive then is to grow as much as you can. And when you grow as much as you can, you've increased your input prices, and then you're selling it into a market that's now the price is decreased because there's a glut of supply, right?
Mm.
So what we advocate for through sorghum and millets in particular, excuse me, I'm just going to hold the cat because the cat is just wanting to be held. Um,
Charlie wants to be in the picture. That's it.
Charlie has to be in the picture. Um, anyway, so what we advocate for is local value addition. So we don't want farmers wherever they are. We don't want them growing a raw grain and selling a raw grain. We want them growing the grain and then selling something like making flour out of it, or
Oh,
extruding
okay.
it, making it into a snack food, or flaking it, making it into a cereal, whatever it might be.
Okay.
And the reason we focus on sorghum and millets is just for the reasons that you said, which is that nobody knows what sorghum and millets are.
Yeah.
So let me unpack that one for you.
Okay.
All right. So first of all, sorghum is what's considered a major millet. Millets, there's actually about a dozen different varieties of millets. They're all small, coarse grains. We call them nutrigrains, and they're mostly within the Poaceae grass family. They're native to. Hang on, just one sec.
Sure.
This, oh, you're going to get a lot of personality in this
Okay,
in this
Charlie.
interview.
Charlie the cat.
For all the important work that we do, and I travel all the time, so when I am home,
You
this cat in particular is glued to my hip. So
wow.
I hope your viewers like cats.
Oh, no problem. I'm an animal person. I actually have five little dogs and four cats.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
and a big yard, so I can let them all out.
yeah. Well, we certainly like our cats here too. Anyway, so they're members of the Poaceae grass family, and they're native to West Africa, what's now Nigeria, to Ethiopia in East Africa, Mesopotamia, what's now Iraq and Iran, Turkey, that area, as well as India. They're some of the first grains ever cultivated by mankind. And because of the environments they grew up in, again, they're very drought resistant. So when a drought hits, just like the grass in your lawn, they'll turn brown, but they won't die. They go dormant. So when you get a little bit of moisture, they perk back up. And while that does affect the yield, at least you'll still have a yield. Whereas comparable crops like maize, for example, will just burn up and die. Maize and wheat have this problem. Because we as a species evolved alongside these grains. Again, remember the first ones that we grew. Our gut microbiome evolved alongside them as well. And so there's research now, it's been published in the journal Nature from the Food for Health Center. It's actually located right here in Nebraska. A couple of years ago that showed that sorghum in particular helps to rebalance the human gut microbiome. There's also hundreds of research papers, peer-reviewed, published from academic institutions around the world that show things like anti-diabetic benefits, anti-carcinogenic benefits, heart health benefits, and anti-inflammatory benefits, just to name a few. On
Mhm.
the anti-diabetic side, and to what your acupuncturist mentioned with the blood sugars, uh, sorghum in particular, but other millets also, are lower on the glycemic index than comparable
Correct.
grains. And so what that means is that it takes longer to digest, so you stay fuller for longer. And this becomes a tool in helping to manage blood sugars.
Mm.
I've got a lot of friends in India who will tell you that they've been diagnosed with diabetes and just changed their diet to include millets, and now that manages their diabetes entirely. So we know these things have been done. So from a nutrition standpoint, it's really, really healthy grains. They are tough to find here in the U.S., though.
Yes,
The U.S. is the largest producer of sorghum in the world,
it is.
but it is.
Where does it go?
Well, that's the thing, and this is part of what we're trying to change. This goes back to those commodity markets. So
Mm.
China buys about 93% on average of U.S. sorghum, and it gets put into a boat as cheaply as possible, and it gets sent to China, and they make something called baijiu with it, which is like a whiskey. It's a really,
Oh.
really strong whiskey.
Hmm.
But because they buy so much, and even on the global level, they buy so much, they can really dictate the price, right? And so it becomes disincentivized for farmers to want to grow it because they're never getting really a premium price because going back, there's no real value addition. So what ends up happening is we're sending 93% of our grain sorghum out of the U.S. to China as cheaply as possible. But then when I want to go and buy sorghum or
Expensive.
any other millet to put on my grocery or on my pantry shelf, it's usually imported from India of all places. So it's ironic in that sense. And we love international trade with India. That's fantastic. But if we've got the best sorghum in the world here, which USDA consistently tells us that we do, why are we sending it as cheaply as possible?
Right. Why we're not
So
eating it?
yeah, we need to do better with that, right? For so many reasons.
Oh, yes.
Imagine the amount of money that we could save in our healthcare system if we say included some education and more products on the grocery store shelf for consumers. I mean, it would really really be a game changer here in the U.S.
I believe so. And that's why I saw the email regarding this program and I thought it was unbelievable because you're teaching the children. So tell me a little bit about how did you start going with the education for the children? That's through the foundation?
Well, yeah, so kind of. It works hand in hand, right? So through my LLC called Blue Milo, we publish a series of children's books called the Sorgho Squad, and you can find those at sorghosquad.com. They're also on Amazon. We now have a merchandise store, and we're actually we've commissioned a video game. So the first level is almost complete, actually. So
Oh, nice.
hopefully here in the next couple of months we'll have a game up on your app store for the Sorgho Squad. And yeah, they're intended for children. They're comic book style. I call them Indiana Jones meets Captain Planet. So they're fun. They're fun, but they're also educational. And they're meant for kids between the ages of about 9 and 12, 9 and 13.
Okay.
But more importantly, for their parents. What we find is that nobody really cares about sorghum and millets, and why should they, right? Because they're weird names,
Yeah,
right?
they don't even know what it
The
is.
mill,
That's the
yeah,
thing.
millets are like some of the millets are like foxtail and finger and proso and pearl, and who cares about that stuff? But what people care about, what they care about, again, is food security. They care about the environment. Again, water conservation. These grains, sorghum uses a third of the water of maize. Foxtail millet uses a tenth of the water of maize. Um, Soil health, creating biology within the soil for the soil microbiome. These grains do that too. Carbon sequestration, they have large root biomasses. They sequester a lot of carbon and sequester it in the soil. So what people really care about are those things. And so those are the things that we really address, and then we position sorghum and millets as a solution, a very good solution to these problems. And what we found is we've gotten really, really great reviews for those books. Kids absolutely love them. We did the Miami Book Fair a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay.
I'll actually be in London here in a couple of weeks. We're doing the London Book Fair ahead of a food technology conference that I'm also speaking at there.
Nice.
Yeah, and just continuing to grow the brand. So we're looking for folks that can help us get into distribution and animation. But more importantly, all of the sales, I mentioned those books go through my LLC, but the proceeds from those sales go back into Sorghum United Foundation, which is what's then doing the what I call the real work on
Right.
the ground. But without the educational piece, Alida, it's really a challenge. I grew up on a farm. I'm never going to ask a farmer to grow something they can't sell or that they can't sell for a profit. Because environmental sustainability and nutrition sustainability, that also has to include economic sustainability.
Mm,
We get that. And consumers can't request a grain if they don't know it exists. So
exactly.
um, instead of just talking within agriculture to other agriculturalists, why don't we talk to consumers who are actually looking for alternatives to put on their dinner plates?
Yeah, that way
Uh,
you don't have to eat rice.
yeah, well, and it's funny you mentioned that because we use sorghum at home just like rice. Last week I made a stir fry, and instead of rice, I used sorghum.
Mm,
When we have conversations with people in the Middle East. In fact, I'll be in Dubai next week as well, just for a quick event. But the MENA region, the Middle East region, they're heavily dependent upon rice. Same thing in the Pacific, by the way.
right. And
And so
Latins. I'm Spanish, so rice is like
yeah,
everything.
yeah, so diabetes is a big problem, and obesity is a big problem in some of those countries.
Yes.
And we're not going to replace rice, so we don't want to replace rice. But if once or twice a week you're opting out to have these other grains instead of the rice,
Right.
now you're on track to some better outcomes.
Yeah.
And by the way, one thing that's interesting, according to the United Nations, about 22.3% of the world's children under the age of 5. So think about that statement for a second. Almost 25% of the world's population under the age of 5 suffer from stunting. And stunting is when their bodies and their brains don't develop as they should. They're stunted because of poor nutrition. And these are
Wow.
often areas that are rice dependent. So if we can help these areas, and even here at home, to look at alternatives to rice within their diets that are healthier, more highly nutritive, and help them to manage blood sugars and things like this better. We're really changing an entire generation of people who would otherwise grow up with some less developed mental and physical capabilities. I mean,
That that
it's a big
that's the
deal
most
what we're doing.
right.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing because I talk about health and diet, and a lot of people they're like, "Oh, what are you talking about, Alita?" I go, "No, I have facts. I like speaking to you. Like I heard about mullet from my doctor, but I went to alternative medicine, so I've been learning a lot more about different things that you can eat to be healthier. And our children, our food system is terrible in the United States. They McDonald's, Wendy's, all the fast food should just go. They should just ban it all, and start over again or something. Because I had a conversation with a doctor from Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center in Miami, and we talked about the red dye number 3 that got banned, right?
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah.
another thing. So all the dyes that are in our food, but there's still 9,000 foods that have dyes in them. So they took one out, but there's still a whole bunch of other ones.
Right.
So
And this is
one at a time, I guess, but
Yeah, well, this is the approach, the reason we're taking this approach, actually. So, food systems are tough to change, and a lot of our global food systems are driven by large food corporations out of the U.S. and Europe in particular. Um, we know that sometimes the status quo is where they want to be, right? They know how to work with these other grains. They know what sells. They've done their market research, and it would cost a lot of money for them to want to just change and say, hey, we're going to do the right thing. Now, in a perfect world, that would happen, but we can't necessarily influence that. So what we do instead is we try to create consumer demand at a grassroots level. By the way, our network, we have, gosh, over 6,000 people now located on every continent except for Antarctica. And they're not just farmers, they represent all points in the value chain. And whether they're a fabricator creating small scale mechanization or a processor making flour or just somebody who's concerned about environment and nutrition. These are people that are saying, hey, we really want these grains. And money talks. So the more consumers go to the grocery store, the more consumers start demanding sorghum and millets within those formulations for the foods that they already like. Then we get the ear of those large corporations. The trick is going to be, and this actually happened with McDonald's not too long ago. McDonald's introduced a millet-based bun, which is great because that makes it gluten-free, right?
Right.
The problem is still then how heavily processed is that
Uh,
bun, and have we lost the nutritive value? And so, one thing that our organization now is working on through a group of nutritionists in India that we've brought on as fellows,
mhm.
we're working on, creating the scientific data that will show processors, here's how you can mass produce these things, get them to be shelf stable, but also keep the nutrition. And this is going to be really important. So I'm actually speaking at several food science conferences, food technology conferences around the world here in 2025 on that topic. Uh,
That's
so,
incredible. I'm happy that this is going on. I'm happy that you're doing this. And I was just laughing in my head because you said, more people were asked for it. I'm gonna go to Publix over here in a supermarket. I need some mullet. What? What? You have
but
sorghum? They're gonna look at me like I'm crazy. Okay.
I, I will correct you if you don't mind.
Yes.
Mullet is the thing I wore in the 80s.
Mullets. What do you
Millet,
millets?
millet,
Millets, not
millet.
mullets. Millets.
Yeah.
Millets. Sorry, millets.
No, it's
I don't
all
want a
right.
mullet.
I know some places in Florida where I see a lot of mullets.
Yes, yes, it's true. It's true. Oh no. So
No, but
millet.
no, but you know what? Again, this speaks to the earlier point that people aren't familiar with these grains, and this is why I do what I do, why our organization does what we do. Because and it's okay. We don't always get it right. Not even us. We don't always get it right. And sometimes it's just having the conversation and having a little bit of a ability to poke fun at ourselves, and we get it. So, but yeah, millets, and you know what they'll probably tell you is, well, we don't know what those are. There are some companies that they may be familiar with though that are working in that space. Here in the U.S., the largest distributor for sorghum and millet-based products is Bob's Red Mill. They're out of, I think, Oregon or Washington.
Mm,
They're importing from India. We do have a new mill coming online just south of me here in Nebraska. And we're trying to encourage additional value added processing. In Florida, actually, there is a pasta made with sorghum. It's being imported from Switzerland. Our vice president is actually her name is Monia Karama, and
mhm,
she's from Milan. And she's patented a sorghum-based pasta that's just pure sorghum, no xanthan gum, no other additives. And I'm trying to remember the name of the company that is now importing her product into Florida. I think South Florida. It's Doctor something or other, and I can't remember the name of it.
mm.
So if she sees this, she's going to be upset because she would have been like, "Hey, Nate, this was a chance for a commercial." But uh,
Well, you get back to me on that one, and I can put it
yeah,
in a post. But I did find it. I guess if you go to like Whole Foods,
hmm,
okay, any kind of natural supermarket. So there's a couple where I'm up here. I moved from Boca Raton. I'm 2 hours north now,
okay,
and more I farming. I guess lot more land. I wanted a house with land, and
hmm,
down south it's getting like you're on top of each other, and
right,
they want $1 million, and you're like this,
hmm,
so.
yeah, no, I get it, yeah, yeah,
And you grew up on a farm, so you know how nice it is to have space and be able to do your own farming. So I've been doing a little bit. I'm having a problem with moles. Do you know how to get rid of moles?
moles like
I
the
got
animal
the
moles.
animal, they're all over my yard. I got holes everywhere.
Oof. Well, there's
They're,
nothing quite like sticking a garden hose down there.
we'll
That
try.
that does work. You said you've got some cats?
Yeah.
Put a cat on one end and stick a garden hose down the other.
Oh
That'll
yeah,
take
that's
care of
it.
it, Chris.
They're pretty yucky. They're pretty ugly looking too. But I didn't even know what a mole was. Okay, I'm up here. I move up here. I've been here not even a year yet, and I'm trying. I planted some pineapples in the yard, and every time I come out, the pineapples eaten. I'm like, why is my pineapple leaves eaten? So I found out there's the cottontail rabbits. They come through the fence, and they're
Mhm.
rabbits going through my yard and eating the stuff, and then they leave. I'm like, what? So, so then I found out then I kept going out to the yard and seeing the holes. I'm like,
Mhm.
what? That's a huge hole. Like, what is digging? I thought it was the dogs, and it wasn't. And they said, no, those are moles. So I haven't seen them yet, but there's holes everywhere. So
Yeah, well, there's different ways to take care of them, but let me throw this at you for a second. So, one of the biggest problems that a sorghum or a millet farmer will tell you is actually birds. Birds will, if a flock of birds roosts on a sorghum field, they will eat a quarter of the yield easily, right?
wow.
Because they absolutely love it. Birds love it, which is great for biodiversity. But most places around the world are like, oh, how do we control the birds? How do we control the birds? So I was in India and I was talking to a farmer there, a smallholder farmer, through a translator. He spoke Hindi, um, and I said, well, how do you manage the birds? And he says, that's God's portion. And it was kind of a joke and it was funny, but I pressed him on it. I said, well, tell me, what do you mean by that? He says, well, he says, listen, we need the birds too. The birds are part of the environment. We need the birds also. And yeah, it hits the pocketbook, but if we don't feed them, then we lose them. We don't have them, right? And so I would say the same thing, with your pineapples, with your rabbits, and with your moles. I mean, finding ways to control them is important, but also recognizing the fact that
They,
they we may not understand fully what it is that they're bringing to the table from an environmental standpoint, and they might be a nuisance in regard to pineapples, but there may be some other benefits for them to be there.
yeah.
Uh, my own lawn here, I live on an acreage just outside of Lincoln, Nebraska, about 1.3 acres, and when we moved in, it was this beautiful, just green lawn, and everybody around here had this beautiful, just green lawn, and I realized I wasn't seeing the pollinators that I'd like to see, and we didn't have as many rabbits and things like that. And so now when a patch of clover pops up and dandelions pop up or whatever, I let them go. I don't need to have a perfectly green lawn. I would rather have the biodiversity. I'd rather have
Mm.
uh, you know, clean water that I'm not pumping chemicals. Because we're on
Yes.
a well. We're on a well. So
Oh,
anything I put on my lawn is going to end up in my water, right? So I'd rather not have to mess with additional chemicals in my water, and I'd
yeah.
rather be able to look out and see the birds and the rabbits and the bees floating around and doing their thing. It just makes me feel like I'm a
Yeah.
human being on planet Earth, right?
Yeah, I love the animals. I mean, I love I love the birds. I see the cardinals that come by, the blue jays. We have woodpeckers. We have hawks also.
Hmm.
So I have to be careful when I take out the little because my dogs are little. So because what it's happened, I go outside and I have to sit there and look, and there comes the hawk circling. And the other day
Yep.
I saw it trying to get a little bird, and as I scared it with the hose, I didn't even know it was there, and he flew up, and the little bird fell out. So the little bird
Mhm.
got saved because I watered. But we see them all the time here where we are, and it's interesting because I'm only 2 hours from Fort Lauderdale or something, right? And
Hmm.
it doesn't seem that it's not that far, but it's a whole different life up here because it's a residential area where everybody has at least a quarter acres, the minimum. Okay.
Hmm.
And then more land like that. But one thing that concerns me is I don't see farms. Like I don't see farmers markets in a place that's so much land and people are not farming. And I get frustrated. I came up here to go to farmers to get my fresh, vegetables
Hmm.
and fruits and all that. And it's such a hard thing to find, which I just
Well, depending on what your covenants are, things like that, we have a large garden that we've put in here. Again, we're on 1.3 acres. We have a large garden that we've put in, and then I put in an orchard a few years ago, which is an orchard is kind of a slow burn. It takes a while for those trees to produce fruit, right? But we're getting there. Um, and when we did that, all of a sudden we had another neighbor down the road put in a garden, right? And another one over here put in a garden. And so sometimes just being the change you want to see is really important. When people see that that hey, wow, Alida's tomatoes look amazing. Maybe I can, right? And like my wife, she started making her own salsa and ketchup and things like this, right? And so our neighbors get all these all sorts of gifts in canning season, so to speak.
yeah, I've heard. I didn't know about,
Yeah.
I've been reading about canning. I'm like, how do I do that? My husband thought I was crazy. You're a New Yorker. You're gonna can?
Anybody can. What
I'm a
anybody
city
can.
girl.
What's the phrase? I can you?
So I have
By
a
the way,
couple of things growing outside. I put in there's a mango tree, avocado tree that's gonna take a while, but they're growing. I
yeah.
have a moringa tree, which I planted by seed. What else do I have? I have lemongrass. I have tomatoes. I'm putting in cucumber. I bought a whole bunch of seeds. I'm gonna put in cucumbers. I got green peppers or red peppers.
Hmm.
So little bit and herbs. I have basil and things like that. So I love going outside taking my herbs and then making my sauce and everything. It's so good.
Yeah. Well, it's funny we're having this conversation because one thing that people don't think about growing in their gardens is grain, right? I mean, well, the closest we get maybe is sweet corn, right?
Yeah.
But we can certainly grow grains too. And in fact, a little fun experiment that maybe you and your listeners can do. One of the largest markets for sorghum in the U.S. and millets is birdseed. Okay.
Oh,
Uh, and so if you go to the supermarket or you go to the market and you buy a bag of bird seed, you get a bird feeder in your backyard, look at the ingredients. Most of it is going to be, it's probably sunflowers, it's going to be
right.
sorghum, it's going to be probably proso millet. And what's great is the birds will plant it for you. So like
Oh,
when we fill up our bird feeder,
I have
though
one.
the birds are messy, they always spill, and every year invariably we end up with this small stand of sorghum and millets underneath that
Wow.
bird feeder. And then when they're ripe, when they're ready to harvest, you cut off the heads, take the grains off there, and there you go,
Nice,
and
nice.
then you got some food right there. So obviously, if you're growing in a garden in proper rows and depths and everything like that, you can do better. But if you want to be lazy about it, the birds will do it for you.
And I have
Um,
seed. I have bird seed. I have a little bird cage. But then
yeah,
we were fighting the squirrels because the squirrel, we put it in a spot and the squirrel, they're too smart, you know? It's on a little shed in the back.
yeah.
So he climbed over the fence and then climbed up the top of the shed and then came down to get the
Well,
seed.
we've got ours hanging on like a crook,
Okay.
so it's just it's too narrow for them to climb up. So
Oh,
the only
okay.
thing that can get it is the birds. But it's when I grew up, again, growing up on the farm, just about 45 minutes west of where I live now.
Hmm.
We had deer all over the place. We had quail and pheasants all over the place. I can't tell you the number of times I hit a quail or a pheasant with my car growing up.
Oh, wow.
Um, and now, so in the last 35 years or so, that area, instead of being, we had beans, wheat, and sorghum in rotation on our farm, but since the early 90s, it's all been corn on soybeans is the rotation, which is so just two crops, this monoculture system. And now there aren't birds there. There's not quail, there's not pheasants.
Wow.
In fact, the only place you find them is actually there's a farm that raises quail and pheasants to be sold to hunting preserves. And so, I mean, it's really just in a short period of time, within like a
Yeah.
fraction of my lifetime, that
Yeah.
we've seen this ecosystem change just by eliminating some of these other crops from our cropping systems.
Yeah.
Not to mention the soil biology, which now, I mean,
Oh,
the worse the biology is, the more fertilizers have to be dumped on fields, and that seems like it increases every year. The biology in that soil used to be really, really good, and now since a few decades of monoculture cropping, and boy, it's just heavy fertilizers, which then
yeah.
again into the
Yeah.
water system, and cancer rates increase, and autoimmune disorders increase, and everything else into that region. It's really tough to see.
Yeah, it is. It's a horrible cycle that we've gotten into. So we
Right,
need
but
to start
but
going back again, like you
yeah,
said, like before when people were farmers and talking about that. So around here, I hear the chickens and the roosters.
yeah.
My neighbors went to his friend and they brought me fresh eggs. Oh my gosh. It was like so awesome. I'm like, people, you have, she's, oh, I don't like eggs. You don't give them to me. What are you talking about? Give me an 18 pack of fresh eggs that just,
Hmm.
that just popped out of the chickens not too long ago. I'm like, they taste so good.
And
And
you probably noticed that the color of the yolk was richer as
yes,
well,
yes,
because again, it's based upon the diet, and when chickens are eating grains like sorghum and millets, and grass and bugs and things like that, you're seeing those richer, more highly nutritive eggs versus the ones you see in the grocery store that are pretty pale yellow.
yeah, they don't even taste
Usually,
good.
yeah, well, they're usually fed like a corn soy mix, and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And just to go back to the farmers for a second though, um, I'm always really careful because it's really easy to blame problems on a group of people that we don't feel connected to, right?
Mm,
And oftentimes farmers do get that. And are there practices, like within that monoculture cropping system that need to be changed? Absolutely. But the reality is when I go back down to that area and I tell our farmers, hey, you should consider putting sorghum in your rotation,
mhm,
the question is going to be, and always is, where do I sell it?
mm.
So the local grain elevator doesn't take it, and they don't have any local processing for it. So we can't ask them to grow something if they can't also
Right,
sell it,
right,
right?
right.
So
That's
if we want to really make this change without just pointing a finger and saying you should do this or getting some regulation involved, if we really want to make this change as consumers, the power we have is within the purse, right?
mm,
To start requesting those products, to maybe invest in those facilities that or those people that can make value added products like a cookie or a bread or a
yeah. Oh, I lost. I couldn't hear you. What happened? For a second, I couldn't hear you.
oh my gosh, that was
Oh, there
probably
we
the best
go. There we go. There we go. It was like
that
a
was probably that's probably the best second of the whole show.
Oh, I see. My internet said is unstable. Why is my internet unstable? What's going on?
I don't know. I don't
Uh,
know. I
anyway, but
usually
this,
I'm the one who's unstable.
but
No, I
yeah,
just
I mean,
the,
I wasn't blaming the
no
farmer
no no
because I know
no
that's a complex thing I don't know about. Unfortunately, there's a lot of rules and regulations they probably have to abide by, and it's not like you just have like me. I have a little piece of land. I'm gonna throw some stuff on there. Nobody's gonna bother me. You know what I mean? Because it's my
right.
land. But if you're producing for other people, then that's a whole nother story.
Right. And I wasn't trying to imply that you were. I know you weren't.
Yeah.
You weren't pointing that finger. This is just a common thing that I think we need to discuss in
Yes.
circles outside of agriculture.
Yes.
Which, by the way, I love it when people tell me they say, "Well, I don't work in agriculture, so this doesn't affect me." I'm like, "Okay, listen.
Yes, it does.
If you eat, you're connected to agriculture.
That's right. That's right.
That's, so that means everybody." And all the jobs that go around agriculture. The FFA here in the U.S. has a great saying where they'll tell kids, students, they tell them, listen, there's 435 careers in agriculture, and only two of them are farmer and rancher, right? So all the things from investment banking to software development to fabrication to insurance to, I mean, whatever,
Right.
all
Right.
this stuff is ancillary to agriculture, and that's becomes the basis of any good economy. So absolutely, whether you've got a small rooftop garden in New York City, a quarter of an acre, a half an acre in Florida, or you're farming, in a fourth, fifth generation family farm that's several thousand acres, we're all connected to agriculture in one
Yeah.
way or another.
Yeah. I see it, like I said, I see it a lot up here in the town that I'm in now because it's very, there were a couple of farms, some, how do you call it? Landscaping places, and there's a lot of land up here. So there's still a lot of land. And the thing is that I have a hard time finding, like, again, I was going to ask you, how do you get seeds then? Like, do I get the bird seeds and just plant them, or where can I get the millets and the sorghum to seeds and actually plant them?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can use the bird seed, sure. That's not necessarily the most effective way.
Right.
Um, the best way would actually be, and you have to find a seed dealer that's willing to work with you, because again, here in the U.S., our seed system, regardless of what it is, they're used to catering to farmers who are growing thousands of acres, right?
Oh,
So, but if you
can
go to
get a little bit.
well, if
I
you go to a seed dealer and say buy a bag of sorghum seed, I think I don't know what the price is now, but a couple years ago, last time I looked, it cost about $15 for a bag to plant an acre of sorghum. That same acre, by the way, for corn would cost about $330 per bag.
wow.
So there's a huge cost difference there.
Hmm.
But yeah, if you could find a local sorghum dealer, there's some great companies around, S&W Seed, Sorghum Partners, Advanta operates here in the U.S. Uh,
Hmm.
Richardson Seeds is another good one. But there's tons of them.
Oh, okay, good. I'm gonna
Golden
look that
Acres is
up.
another. So a quick Google search, look for seed dealers in your area.
Hmm.
In Florida, you'll find a lot of folks who are probably selling forage sorghum, which is here's another distinction, by the way. Um, so forage sorghum in the South, there you've surely heard of sorghum syrup. It's very popular in the South.
Mm.
That comes from what we call forage sorghum, which is a really tall varieties that grow like 11 feet. They've got a small grain head, and then they press the stalk to extract the sugars, make the syrup, similar to what you would do with sugarcane. But then there's also grain sorghum, which is smaller. It's only about maybe 3, 4 feet tall,
Right.
and it has a bigger grain head. And that's where you're going to get the grains that you would put in your pantry, right?
Okay. Okay.
So finding the right distinction is important. And then when you're planting the grain sorghum, if you're planning to eat it, white sorghum is typically white or cream sorghum is typically considered food grade. That's all, not that the others aren't. It's just that they're flavor neutral. So
Okay.
if you're thinking of using it like rice, rice is flavor neutral. It's the same thing. It's going to taste like
Put
whatever
it
you season it as.
right.
When you get into like the red sorghums, those are actually healthier for you.
Hmm.
But they can have kind of an earthy, sometimes a little bit of even a bitter taste, which isn't a bad thing. It's just a different taste.
Yeah.
So just know, kind of do a little bit of research before you plant. Make sure you get the one that you want. And do a Google search, find out where a seed dealer might be. Anybody in commerce likes to make money, so even if they're only selling you a bag, they'll probably sell you the bag.
Yeah. No, it'd be good. It's a good thing to research and have my people out there also do your research and see because you can get basic seeds like at Home Depot, at the where they sell plants, little plants of herbs and things like that. And sometimes I buy them to start them, the herbs. But I do a lot of things with seeds. I bought a whole bunch of seeds the other day. And I know on Amazon you can also buy I don't know how they're organic. I don't understand, but organic seeds, no GMO, whatever, that haven't been touched. And you can buy a variety, like a 52 pack, and it has 52 different items of food.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and those things we do a really good job, and again in our garden too, we use those seeds, and what you find in that market is a lot of vegetables, but the closest you're going to get to a grain is corn, sweet corn.
yeah,
I would like to see seed companies maybe considering, especially as we do more urban farming, right? Maybe
yeah,
considering doing some of that, put some sorghum seed in that little packet instead, right?
yeah.
Um, I mean, I think there's a market opportunity there for sure. But short of that, if a bag of sorghum seed from your seed dealer that would cover an entire acre is too much for you,
I'll
buy
share it.
it,
I'll share it.
buy it and share it with your friends,
Yeah, I
right?
have my neighbor he has a little garden going there too. He has
Yeah.
cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers and
And as far as learning how to grow it, by the way, there's really great agronomy sources, some of which may be too in depth just for the casual gardener. But a quick Google search, there's great agronomy guides from Penn State University, from Purdue University, Texas A&M University's got some great ones online. So you can't hardly throw a stone without finding those resources. We have an article library that we're starting on our website as well.
mhm.
So again, that one is sorghumunited.com. And so there's a little bit of a library there that have some of these guides also.
Oh, that's good.
So there's resources there for you. But really it comes down to just knowing what variety you're planting, when's the right date to plant, um, and what seed depth. Typically, it's about 2 to 3 inches is
Oh,
how deep you want to plant it. 15-inch rows keeps weeds down, provides cover for birds and things like that too. So it's just basic things. It's not
right.
difficult.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right. No, that sounds good. I got something else I learned today and I can plant. So, and I can eat it. So I love it.
yeah,
Love being able
yeah.
to have there's a incredible what's the word? Satisfaction when you go and get your own food from your own garden. I don't think a lot of people know that because they've never done it.
Mhm.
But it really is. Even just cutting my basil and putting it in my pasta sauce. Oh my gosh, it's so good. I have wild oregano from Puerto Rico. I cut a little branch from my mother-in-law's house and I brought it with me in a little baggie and I planted it and it's huge now.
Mhm. How'd you
So
get that through customs?
Yeah, it was a little branch. I just put it in my purse. Yeah, I got put it with my mascara, hide it over there. I know. There's so many things you can't bring from over there. But saying that's one thing I love. I grew up in New York. I was born in New York, but because my grandparents were in Puerto Rico, they had a farm. So as a little girl, I spent the summers there, and
Mhm.
I remember feeding the chickens and the pigs and all that stuff, and didn't realize that we were eating them until the day I went to find my chicken, and she goes, "What do you mean you named the chicken?" I didn't tell her that I named the chicken. She said, "You don't name the chickens." So, and I said, "What are we eating?" She says, "Chicken." I go, "I'm not eating." Kill my chicken. I was so upset. That's when I learned that the animals for eating, not for pets.
Well, I mean, that's agriculture, but I mean, just talking about your hawk earlier and the other bird that it released.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of the experience here on this planet. I mean,
Yeah. It's a
everything has to
circle,
eat.
circle of
Everything
life.
has. Yep. And the more we can do that in symbiosis with each other and with our other fellow species,
Right.
uh, the better off we can be. So just like that Indian farmer told me, with that portion that the birds are eating, well, that's God's portion. Well, that's actually a really magnanimous way to look at it.
Yeah, that's true. Because a circle, they go and they fly, they land up dropping the seeds, it grows, and then it's
Hmm.
a circle of life. They eat, we eat, so and it's
Yep.
sustainable. Um, I was gonna say something, it just left me. Oof, that was terrible.
Well,
Uh,
just a couple things if we can shift
oh
gears a
sure.
little bit.
Oh yes.
Uh, One, yeah, sorghosquad.com. There's 3 books published in this series. One thing that's interesting, you might find interesting anyway, the books are very intentionally written. Remember, I said that these are ancient grains and they've been around in cultures forever. And what that means is that different cultures have created different names for these grains, which actually causes a bit of a challenge. So if I'm in a place where they call it jowar, like they do in India, and I say sorghum, then they don't know what the heck I'm talking about, right?
Wow.
So we named the characters after real world different names for the grain, so that people could understand that they're all part of the same thing. So we have a character named Jowar, who represents the industrial applications for sorghum. We have a character named Mishila, which is what they call it in Ethiopia, and Mishila represents the health and nutrition benefits for sorghum. And then we have Milo, which Milo is the landrace for sorghum in the U.S. in North America, and he represents the environmental benefits for sorghum. And then even the name Sorgho, Sorgho is what they call it in Europe.
Huh.
So very intentionally written.
Wow.
The books are not just fun, not just an adventure, but they're also meant to bring some of the challenges of our food systems uh, into an understandable way, a way that's digestible, no pun intended,
Mm.
to a young reader. So not to shy away from some of the real world problems, but like, hey, this is why we have a chapter where they go and visit a farm, and the farmer says, "We don't grow this anymore." So okay, why don't you grow it anymore? So helping young people to understand not only what these grains are and why they matter, but helping them to start to create a foundation where they're thinking about our food systems, because these young people, it won't be that long until they're the ones who are making those decisions themselves, as professionals or as individuals.
Right.
So this is really important. So again, they fit really well in schools. We would love to work with school systems to get the books in. They fit a lot of curricular things around not only health and nutrition, sustainability, but also multiculturalism, history, et cetera, et cetera. We've got the video game in the work as well. Again, all of this stuff supports the good work we're doing with Sorghum United Foundation. And then at the Sorghum United Foundation, very easy to support us. There's a donate button on the page. We
Okay.
are a 501(c)(3), so it's tax deductible, and your money goes back into working with local communities to empower them and create generational change at the local level, globally. So kind of a
Yeah.
twist, a local level,
No,
globally.
that's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, so I mean, it's all very meaningful work.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your listeners can follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think we do some pretty cool things. We go to a lot of cool places. I'm not home very often, so check that out. And yeah, if we can ever be a resource to anybody, if any of your listeners have questions, they can certainly reach out to us as well through the website. Always glad to take a question, regardless of where I am. You can even find me on WhatsApp too. So no matter where I am in the world, you can ask me questions, and I'll get back to you just as soon as I can.
That's awesome. And I'm trying to see if I get to contact people here for the city and see if you can talk to them for their school, for the schools that are here, and get the children educated on this, and then maybe help the community. You never know. Like I said, there's a lot of land here. Yeah, I was walking yesterday and I saw somebody planted corn. So I saw the corn stalks. I was like, oh, look, corn. So I love
Yeah.
seeing that. So I walk around and I look. Sometimes I go, and if I see a tree that I want, I just cut a little branch. I come here, put it in water, and I start that planted. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I want that palm tree. Let me just get a little palm. People don't even realize you can do that. You can, take a piece from a live plant and actually grow it. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I've gotten very into that, and I hope that people now are getting healthier. I think people are being more conscious about food, that they'll start learning about this and see that it's an alternative. Because I know I get tired of food sometimes. Like I get tired, I can't eat rice every day. Like, and when I was a kid, I can't. I'm like, I don't want any rice. No rice and beans today, please. Or potatoes or sweet potatoes. Like there's like you don't have too
Yeah.
many choices. You feel you're stuck in the circle of potato, sweet potato, and that's it. You know,
Hmm.
instead of using grains, more grains. We used to see the wheat fields all the time and things
Yeah.
like that.
Well, and again, sorghum and millets are great alternatives. Every millet's got a little bit of a different texture, a different bit of a flavor profile, or the red sorghum versus the cream sorghum, right? So, again, it's all edible, and it would be great to see more of that being grown at a local level,
Yeah,
not only for the health and nutrition, but to encourage entrepreneurialism. Encourage those students to maybe think about what's a product I can make with this and sell right in my
yeah.
local market or
Right,
something.
right. And we have to get educated in farming because most of us don't know, like you're saying. And I mean, I just throw things out there and then I start going, why is it not growing? Like I realize simple things, like if it doesn't have enough sun, it's not going to grow. If it doesn't have enough water, it's not going to grow. So it depends on what you're growing. Because
Yeah,
I had my planter boxes, above ground boxes. I put soil and put my stuff in there, and it was under the oak tree, and the oak tree was killing my stuff because of the shade.
right.
So I moved everything to the other side and everything's all beautiful. My tomato plant's getting big. I'm like, oh, look at that. See, just a
Yeah.
little move. So I hope people get more encouraged to learn more about gardening and just do little things. Just start with little things that you can do in the backyard. You don't even have to have such a yard. You can have stuff in planters. When I lived in Boca, we didn't have any really. We had the pool and a little space. That's it. So I put everything in containers. So I was growing
Mhm.
my tomatoes and my herbs all there, lettuce, things like that. And I could just cut them and eat them and in a small space. So you can still do that.
Yeah, it's really satisfying. I
It
agree.
is. It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
satisfying. And let me tell you that when you grow your own stuff, they taste so much better. I have a strawberry plant and I had one strawberry and it was ready and I ate that. Oh my goodness. The taste of that strawberry was like, what? Nothing compared to the ones you buy in the store, unfortunately. I don't know
Well,
if
it's just like those eggs, right? I mean,
yeah.
it's in our food systems, this is actually part of the problem. There's some really good companies, I think here in the U.S. and around the world that are startups anyway, and they call it like ugly fruit or ugly vegetable, ugly produce, whatever, because what ends up happening in the typical grocery store setting is that the consumer wants consistency. So every strawberry needs to look the same, right?
Um,
If it doesn't look the same, they're not going to buy that one, right? But the reality is the way to get that kind of consistency is, um, you know, sometimes with practices that, uh, well, they're just not necessarily how it happens in nature. Let's just put it that
right,
way.
right. They're
Right?
modified. They're modified.
Yeah, well, they're modified, but you need there's variability in nature. If I grow strawberry on my property and you grow strawberry on your property because we have
Right.
different soil types, the strawberries are going to taste different, right? So the strawberries in the grocery store all have to be grown in the same soil type, the same way to get that consistency.
Oh, okay.
And that may or may not affect nutrition. It may not.
Right.
But it certainly can affect flavor, right? So if you're a bit of a foodie and you say, hey, I want a different, so I'm try something different, then grow differently. Honey is a great example, by the way. And anybody who keeps bees and produces honey will tell
Mhm.
you that depending on what those bees eat, where they get their pollen from, it changes the flavor of the honey. It changes even sometimes the color of the honey.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing with people with allergies are encouraged to do is eat honey from that's produced locally because they're eating local pollens and it'll help with your own immune.
Oh. And I have there's a lot of honey here. There's a little place that has honey grown in the like in the area, and they have different like wildflower, orange blossom. Like they can tell that I guess that's what they eat, right? So that's
Yeah.
why the taste of it is in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So this isn't anything new. I mean, we've been doing this as a species since we started domesticating animals and insects and grains, right? So it's just bringing it into the modern world again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And some modification. I think, things have to change. Like, things have to change. The way we eat in the United States is different than when you go to Europe. And I've been to different countries, Spain. I went to Czech Republic and I went to the farmers market and everything smelled like the aroma that came from the fruits and the vegetables was amazing that you can just take a tomato, a red pepper. This is a good example. A red pepper tastes so good. Try a red pepper here in the supermarket. It tastes like water. Doesn't taste like anything.
yeah.
It barely has a flavor. I have some peppers growing in the back. The flavor that came out of my peppers, I'm like, that's it. I'm growing my peppers all the time.
My favorite is purple carrots in India.
Ooh,
Oh my gosh, they are so sweet. They're like candy. They're so, so good.
I've never
And
seen those.
I had never heard of such a thing until I spent a lot of time in India now.
Right.
But yeah, no, they're just the best. And interestingly enough, in the Middle Ages, actually, they were sought after. Those types of things, like purple
Oh.
carrots, for example, or a good example, were sought after by nobility for their medicinal benefits, and they were actually brought from Asia and grown in Europe for a long, long time by noble families. And then, with now this advent of what I call industrial food,
Mm.
and people wanting that consistency on carrots orange, right? So it's gone away. So these trends move and then they move back over time, and it's the same thing with sorghum. We used to eat it for most of human history, but now we've moved away from it in the last 100 years. So trying to move back
But
to it.
back into it.
Yep.
Right. So with the
So
education, with giving the young children education, they can learn about this at a young age and realize the importance of it. And hopefully then now we can continue to affect the other generations to come after that, because and see how it evolves and it changes because every generation will change a little bit, right? Every generation is raised differently. My kids are city grown, they're grown in Florida, but they always see me do things like that because of my background, because of having family in farming, right? And we had a dairy farm. Family had a dairy farm in Puerto Rico. So I remember going there, seeing the calf being born and seeing how they process the milk and do all these things and having fresh milk, which is a whole different story compared to
mhm.
milk you buy in the store.
Right.
So, and I used to keep telling my mother, I used to go, I don't like coming back to New York. The food sucks. I'd rather stay in Puerto Rico because everything's so good. And I grew up going into the farm and picking the mangoes off the tree and the coconuts and the guava, whatever you had, whatever fruits we had. We had a lot of different types of fruits over there that they don't have here.
Mhm.
And just picking them all day long, just eating them and all the vitamins and nutrients that I got, not even realizing it.
For your listeners who are really, really interested in this topic of food and how these markets and change and how consumers' interests can change over time and things like this. And I'll leave this with you before I let you go, Alida, because I do
Mhm.
have another call here shortly.
Sure.
But there's a wonderful book called The Food Explorer,
Explore.
and it's about a gentleman named David Fairchild.
Mhm.
And long story short, David lived late 1800s, early 19th, or early 20th century. And his career consisted of traveling the world and bringing new and novel plants and vegetables and grains to North America, to the U.S. in particular, at a time when U.S. agriculture was, really barley and wheat. Um,
Mm.
so the mangoes you have in Florida, they're thanks to David Fairchild.
Oh, wow.
Avocados in California are thanks to David Fairchild.
Oh, wow.
Japanese cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. are thanks to David Fairchild. And so it's a really fascinating book. And I always look at it when we're talking about creating consumer demand for a product.
Mm.
I go back to that book and I think, here David Fairchild at a time where there was no telephone, no internet, no television, no radio, no airplanes, right?
Mm.
Um, he was able to introduce thousands of species into a market in North America where people didn't know what any of this stuff was, and he was
Wow.
able to create value-added markets for these things here in the U.S.
Wow.
And now, fast forward to what we're doing, we have all these wonderful tools, and all we're trying to do is reintroduce grains back in. So if he could do it for thousands of species, why can't we do it for just a few?
Exactly.
Um,
It's with
yeah.
the
So
technology we have now. There's
yeah.
really no it's boundless. You can just go and get it done,
So check
So
out that book, The
I
Food
will.
Explorer. Again, follow us on the socials, sorghosquad.com and sorghumunited.com for the foundation. Alida, it's been an absolute pleasure to be with you. I think
I know.
I feel like you and I could talk for hours.
I know. I'm so interested. I love learning, and this is a topic that I love. So, but
Yeah,
we'll talk again. We'll keep
I hope
in
so.
touch, and anything new, just let me know, and we'll get you back on the show and get people to
Yeah.
know more. So I
Well,
appreciate your time today, and say hi to Charlie again. He's he
I
was
will. Anytime you need a resource, just reach out to me. And uh, what a lovely conversation.
all
It was
right.
so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, Alita.
Bye. So hi everybody. So that was just an amazing conversation. Sorry, I'm fixing my lipstick because it's not, I don't know what I did. Anyway, so the conversation was incredible. Nate Bloom was really informative. I hope that you enjoyed the show because I really did. And I could keep talking to him for hours, and I have so many questions for him. I could talk to him forever. So, and I'm going to look up that book, Food Explorer by David Fairchild. Check it out if you like farming and learning about more stuff. Check that out. And don't forget to go to his website, SorghoSquad.com. And also he has the foundation, which is called Sorghum United Foundation. So thank you, Nate Bloom. And thank you, everybody out there. Alida Hernandez, Rebooted Mindset. See you next week. Bye.